Hello everyone, welcome to the Defense Lines, Hungary's first podcast on the control functions in banking, insurance and corporate sectors. My name is András Bácsfalvi and I'm your host for the show that brings you real value and hands-on takeaways from the field of compliance, anti-money laundering, IT security, fraud prevention, risk management and internal audit. In order to achieve these ambitious goals, I'm gonna be joined by my colleagues who are not just the best in what they do, but they also have inspiring personalities that helps them through their journey of their professional lives. My today's guest is Rita Pikó. Rita is an attorney at law for more than 24 years with admission to the bars in Switzerland and Germany. Today she is in her own law firm, Pikó Uhl Rechtsanwälte AG in Zurich, and specialized in corporate governance, corporate compliance and internal investigations. Previously, Rita worked as attorney at law in leading international law firms in Frankfurt am Main, Germany, and was a global governance, global chief compliance and risk officer of Celanese AG, a listed stock corporation. Rita regularly lectures in compliance at several universities. Recently, Rita co-edited and co-authored the Handbuch Corporate Compliance in Switzerland, a book with 69 chapters from 65 compliance practitioners. Hello Rita, welcome to the Defense Lines.
Hello András, thank you for having me today.
Just as a quick warm-up, tell me something about yourself, your colorful professional background. You have a Hungarian name, but you've never worked in Hungary. You started your career in Germany and later you also worked in Switzerland. For me, it really sounds like a fairy tale. Is it really a dream life work? If it is, what is your secret?
Yes, it was and sometimes still is a fairy tale. And it was a long way from where I started. I was born in Debrecen. And when I was 4 years old, my parents moved to Germany, to the south of Germany. So in the next couple of years, I moved several times from South Germany and Hungary, vice versa. Later, I studied at the Lake of Constance and Exeter in the UK. And in between, I spent a year in Budapest, where I worked on my PhD on the Hungarian arbitration court. I later worked at a leading German law firm called Hengeler in Frankfurt. For me, it was a stepstone to my second job at Celanese, which is the spin-off of Höchst Aktiengesellschaft. And later in my career, I decided to open my own boutique law firm in Frankfurt, focusing on compliance. After about 18 years in Frankfurt, I moved to Switzerland, where I, together with my partner, established a compliance boutique in Zurich. So one phase of my journey might be that I left my comfort zones several times in my life, and life rewarded me with incredible opportunities. So I crossed countries, languages, borders, biases, and this opened always new doors and always new opportunities.
And how did you find compliance and why did you get stuck to this profession? In your opinion, what is the charm of this profession? What is the charm of compliance?
Oh, compliance found me. I was a corporate lawyer at Celanese at that time, and this was a stock corporation listed at the New York and Frankfurt stock exchanges with a global name share. And this means that the US legislation applied directly, and the company needed a chief compliance officer. So my boss came around the corner and said, Rita, you could do this job. And this was in 2002. I had no clue what compliance is at all. Today, we hardly can imagine that there was a time with no compliance advices or literature, at least in Germany. I started really on a piece of white paper. So the charm until today is the creativity you can develop with doing compliance. Regulations are just one aspect of it. You need to understand the business to support the business. And it is a people's business. To be effective with compliance measures, you need to understand the drivers of the organization and its employees. So you need to work the tools like communication, storytelling, culture, psychological safety at the workplace, or behavioral science, or even role models.
I think your career can be a good example in front of everyone, especially for Hungarians. So I'm really curious about your opinion. What should someone new to compliance do to accelerate their career? What dynamics do they need to be tuned into? Is it important to be a jurist?
Oh, András, I did not plan my career on a piece of paper. I was simply open for new challenges. I believe that as a compliance officer, it helps to have a very high frustration level and never to give up. Because if one door closes, look for another one which you can open. A compliance officer needs to be independent, should not be easily frightened, and stay persistent. It is essential that you take opposition and critics to compliance measures as a challenge and certainly not as a personal opposition. It also helps not to look for admiration within the company while you break up silos or do internal investigations.
Yeah,
so
that's a
your
good point. Yeah.
energy should be fed elsewhere. The admiration or the love you need, you get it from somewhere else, not if you are a compliance officer.
It's like, they say you must be the skunk in the room. This is how it works. So you are not the one who always tells what everyone wants to hear.
Yes, and you will not be admired for what you normally do, because compliance is not always the one who brings the good news.
Exactly.
And regarding your question whether a compliance officer needs to be a lawyer, it is not at all necessary to be a lawyer, I think.
That's a good news. I'm an economist.
You see? Several chief compliance officers have an economical background, which helps them understanding the business. So, however, at the end of the day, it helps to have a lawyer in the compliance team, as you need to understand and cope with the regulations. But finally, having said this, I know quite a lot of chief compliance officers who are not lawyers, who are like you, András, economists.
You work in different countries as a compliance professional. What are the key similarities and the main differences between these jurisdictions, if any, from the compliance point of view?
Germany had several huge compliance cases. Many DAX companies have a compliance history. Look at Wirecard, Volkswagen, Siemens as a prominent example. The German Federal Court clarified that effective compliance management systems will be well considered when deciding on the fines. So the companies received a founded motivation to implement compliance. This has not been laid down in the decision of the Swiss Federal Court yet. However, there are signs that Swiss courts may, in the future, honor effective compliance management systems when addressing the question of the company's liability. And for example, in the Handbuch Corporate Compliance, which I co-edited, one of our authors, who is a judge at the Swiss Federal Court, reflects exactly this understanding. However, I do believe we need more prominent compliance cases brought by the Attorney General to criminal courts in Switzerland. And the FIFA case was very unfortunate in this respect.
So can we say that the German compliance framework is, at least for now, at least this very moment, is more mature than the Swiss one?
Maybe mature is not exactly the word I would use. It is rather they have a long history of very important cases which clearly give signs from the prosecution that is not accepted.
Okay. So they are more experienced in this field?
They are very experienced in this. But even if you would compare with other jurisdictions, the arm of the Attorney General in the US is very, very long with the Foreign Corrupt Practicing Act. And it reaches even until the Vonalak in Zurich, because it was the US Attorney General who was extremely strong in giving signs on the FIFA cases. And all the other prosecutors around the world could learn from that, I think.
Given your professional background, I think it will be very interesting for all of us. What do you see as the key challenges in 2022 and in the near future that compliance teams can face? Do you have a special and maybe secret recipe to overcome them?
Well, I believe in near future, so in 2023, I believe compliance will be one important pillar of corporate social responsibility. The ongoing regulation tsunami in respect of ESG regulations, or have a look at the whistleblowing regulations, will be mainly handled by compliance. The task of compliance is developing from securing pure conformity with rules to a central function taking care of integrity, ethics, and corporate social responsibility. So compliance needs to be strategic, and compliance will be political as well. So my proposal is to see these challenges as chances. Compliance can defend the organizational values and taking the lead regarding the organizational culture.
With more and more compliance departments facing budget cuts, what practices should be prioritized to maintain healthy compliance culture and ethical business conduct? What factors should be considered when balancing cost against effectiveness?
Well, I think know your risks and address these risks by priorities is one issue. You need to be in a situation where you can argue well and prove the effectiveness of your compliance management system. Therefore, you should measure elements of your system, like how many reports do you receive per month, or how many employees know the channels of the whistleblowing system at all. Which channel is used for whistleblowing by the employees and which only very seldom? What kind of cases are reported? From which side do you receive reports regularly? And when you have the analysis, you can well adjust your compliance management system. Further, I would educate the board members. You may tell them.
Yeah, that's a very important point, yeah.
You may tell them what it means for them in person to become liable for compliance cases, or what it means to lose reputation on a personal level. You mean to be on the front page of the tabloids for weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
From the moment on when they understand the purpose of compliance, they may reframe their connection to compliance.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So I think tone at the top or tone from the top is the fundamentum of compliance.
Absolutely. And if you reframe compliance from being only a cost factor to being a cost savior, what I mean by that is that compliance prevents companies from losing company assets by fraud, protects the company and its managers from liability.
Yeah, exactly. And the CEOs must understand that, their reputation can be also an asset for them. And if they lose their reputation, it's not something which you can fix easily. So if you have a good compliance system that can defend you, protect you from many awkward situations, I do agree with you. As for the last question, compliance seems to be more and more important all around the world. How do you see the future of this profession? when will be the first CEO with a compliance background be appointed?
I'm afraid never. I do not see the requirement, honestly. I do not see the requirement of having a CEO with a compliance background. Having said that, what I do see is the requirement of a CCO who understands the business of the company and accompanies the CEO very closely. Compliance has an unquestionable strong function, at least within the listed companies. And what I would like to see is a positive view on compliance on the SME level as well, which is not the case yet.
Okay, so you are saying that compliance is not a profession which can bring you to the first position in a company, but still you can be a very important asset for your company, right?
Well, I do see a lot of compliance officers on C-level and being members of the board, management board, but not directly as the CEO.
Not in Hungary, unfortunately. We are a step behind. We still miss something to be there.
Well, in Germany and even in Switzerland, you have several examples where you have compliance professionals on board levels. Look at Novartis, Klaus Moosmeier, for example, or having said that, for example, Hiltrud Werner, who was responsible for compliance at Volkswagen and who managed the entire monitorship wonderfully. So these are very, very important representatives for this profession.
So thank you very much, Rita. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, András. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining me today. You have just listened to the Defense Lines, the podcast for the control functions. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe so you will never miss a show. András Bácsfalvi is signing off, but till our next meeting, do not forget, those who try to convince you that safety can be increased only by jeopardizing your business goals will eventually deprive you of both.